Hey, you Abe, it's your Uncle Murray again. I was just talking about you with my friend Larry a couple of days ago. I was getting ready for the weekly poker game I have with some of the fellas, but then I stopped to record a letter for you before they all come over, and Larry shows up about 45 minutes early. I heard him banging on the front door, so I go over to let him in, and he says,
Hiya, Murray. Hey, I thought Florence was gone on poker nights.
and I says, well, she is. You know how she hates all the racket we make when we get going. And he says,
Well, then who did I hear you talking to when I walked up?
so I says, oh, that. I was just recording a letter for my nephew Abe. And he says,
Well, what are you doing that for? Don't he know how to read?
and I says, sure he does. But he lost his glasses a while ago, so I've been recording stories for him instead. Then he says,
Well, why don't you just call him on the phone?
and I says, well, he's a little funny about using the phone because he can't talk. And he says,
Well, how come he can't talk? Is he sick or something?
and I says, nah, he ain't sick. He just can't talk is all. He was born that way. Then he says,
You mean he's a dummy?
so I says, hey, watch your mouth. He ain't no dummy. He just can't talk, that's all. He's mute. And then, get this. He says,
Well, then how does he let you know what he's thinking about?
so I says, what are you, stupid or something? How big is that rock you've been living under? For one thing, haven't you heard a word I said? I just got done telling you that I was recording a letter for him because he lost his glasses. Which means we usually write letters back and forth, but we can't right now because he can't read nothing without his glasses, you dope. And for another thing, he's always been able to let us know what he's got bouncing around inside that noggin of his. And he says,
Well, how'd he do that? You know, when he was little, before he could read and write.
so I says, are you serious? You really don't know? Because I thought he was just cracking wise, but I guess he really didn't know. So I held out my arm and I tapped the back of my wrist and I said, what am I doing right now? And he says,
You're asking me what time it is. It's 20 after 6.
oh, for cry eye. So then I cupped my hand behind my ear and I squinted my eyes and I says, now what am I doing? And he says,
You're telling me that you can't hear me and you want me to speak up.
and I says, oh, for Pete's sake, you moron, you're missing the whole point. I'm trying to show you that there's loads of ways to say something without saying nothing. And he says,
I still don't get it.
I says, oh, you're killing me, Larry. Let me see. Oh, here we go. You remember Sheryl Mermaid? He says,
Of course I do. Who could forget her?
I says, it's like that, see? And he says,
Oh, yeah. I get it now. Is it really like that?
and I says, well, sure, kinda, yeah. But not exactly, 'cause, hey, kid, did I ever tell you about Sheryl Mermaid? Oh, my days, how the heck could I forget to tell you about her? So, Sheryl was this little cutie patootie that worked at the Sea King fish stand when we was all teenagers. Her old man, Eddie Mermaid, he was a street vendor, and he was known to have the freshest and tastiest fish within 200 miles. And he had it all. Tuna and haddock and lobster, even octopus. He charged a premium too, 'cause he taught all his daughters to fish with hand lines, so they could fish in the places that the big boats couldn't go. But his youngest daughter, Sheryl, she took fishing to a whole nother level, 'cause she learned how to fish with her bare hands, so she could bring in the real small reclusive stuff that was real hard to catch. But she could bring in the big stuff too, 'cause she had a way of catching them without having to fight them. Like swordfish, for example. Nobody knows how she done it, but she figured out a way to piss him off or something. I don't know if she made faces at him or if she'd moon him or what, but she'd get him to chase her towards a pier, and then she'd get in front of one of the wooden pilings. And then at the last second, she'd move out of the way, and the swordfish would get its nose stuck into the piling, and then she'd just gut the thing right there in the water. Yeah, she was a pretty clever kid. And she didn't use no diving equipment neither. She could just hold her breath for a real long time. Even longer than you could when you used to have your little temper tantrums. You remember that? Yeah, she taught herself how to do it by practicing in the bathtub almost every night. Anyway, well, Sheryl was sweet on this one kid that was almost a whole year older than her, named Johnny Dean. He was named after his great-great-great-grandfather or something like that. a guy named John Dean. He's the guy that come up with them big copper diving helmets that you pump air into through a hose. You know, like that Diver Dan guy on the boob tube. Well, Johnny was totally fascinated with the whole thing, and he had big dreams about salvaging treasure and stuff from sunken ships. And since he practically idolized his eponymous ancestor, he insisted on using the old guy's original equipment when he went diving, and he'd get his little brother Cannonball to stay topside and work the pump. They called him Cannonball because of his fascination with explosives. But since the hose was so short and they didn't have no boat to put the pump into, he could only explore the shallow water by the fishing piers, which was a good thing because Cannonball would get distracted sometimes by lighting off the firecrackers he carried around in his pocket. And he'd stop pumping air down to Johnny, and so he'd pop up out of the water and yell at him, "Hey, what the heck is wrong with you? You trying to kill me? Pay attention, you moron." Anyway, well, that's where Sheryl and Johnny met. They bumped into each other when they was exploring the same spot. A swordfish that was chasing Sheryl, it got confused and it poked a hole in Johnny's diving suit. So they both popped up out of the water and he says, "Oh no, look what you done. You was playing around with that stupid fish and now I got a big old hole in my suit." So Sheryl slaps her forehead and sloshes over to him and starts examining the hole in his suit. But he says, "Hey, what are you doing? Knock it off. You're going to make it worse." So she slaps the forehead again and starts moving toward the pier and motions to him like she wants him to follow her. So they both climb out of the water and they sit down next to each other on the edge of the pier. And he says, "Well, ain't you going to say nothing about it? Like I'm sorry or something real nice like that?" So she starts moving her hands all around. And he says, "What are you doing? I don't get it. Spit it out. Or does the cat got your tongue?" And Sheryl just hung her head down and started crying. And Johnny says, "Oh, don't do that. What's the matter? Can't you talk?" Well, she didn't even look up at him. She just shook her head back and forth. And he says, "Oh, I get it. You was doing that sign language stuff, wasn't you? You're mute, huh?" And she nodded back at him. And he says, "Oh, cool. I always wanted to learn sign language. My old man was in the Navy, and he taught me Morse code and flag semaphores. I love that stuff. Say, you think you could teach me that sign language?" Then, oh my goodness, Sheryl got so excited she thought she was gonna pop. Nobody ever asked her nothing like that before. And nobody as cute as Johnny ever even give her the time of day. So Johnny says, "Can you read and write?" She nods her head up and down real fast. And he says, "Hey, let's meet back here tomorrow. We'll both bring a big old pad of paper and a couple of pencils. Then you can write down what you want to say, and I can take lots of notes on the sign language." Well, Sheryl was so excited that the whole way home it didn't even feel like she was running. It felt like she was just floating through the ocean on an underwater breeze. And when she got home, she ran inside and started signing to her sisters, telling them all about the whole thing. And they were so happy for her that they took turns bending down to pick her up and swinging her around the room. You see, they had to stoop down because all the older merman sisters took after their father, so they was over 6.5 feet tall. But Sheryl took after her mother, so she was only 4'6". And that's why the folks around town called her the Little Mermaid. Da-da-da! That's where that come from, see? And she wished she could have told her mother, too, but she died a few years back from eating a peanut butter and jellyfish sandwich. No kidding. The guy at the deli got the order wrong because he was hard of hearing. That was terrible. Sometimes I just can't help myself. I'm sorry. I don't do it on purpose. Okay, enough squinting around. Anyways, well, Sheryl goes out back to the smoke shed to tell her old man about Johnny and to see what he'll say about it. Well, on these days, he's usually a man of few words, because people have sort of a hard time understanding him, since he got that giant fish hook lodged in his tongue when he was fishing for marlin. Yeah, but Sheryl never has a problem understanding him. So he says, "Now, sweetie, I know how important it is for you to make new friends, and I think it's great that he wants you to teach him sign language. But I still need you to fish with your sisters and to sell the fish on the street, so I can't have you spending too much time with that kid. So I'll tell you what, you can spend a few hours with him on Sundays after church, and we'll see how it goes, okay?" Well, lucky for Sheryl, tomorrow was Sunday, so she could still keep a promise to Johnny. So the next day, right after church, she runs down to the pier with a paper and pencil and sees Johnny already sitting there waiting for her. And she writes down what her father said about only being able to meet once a week. But then Johnny says, I got an idea. You'll teach me sign language, and I'll teach you flag semaphores. I'll write down all the flag symbols so you got something to look at till you learn them all by heart. And I'll stand down the street with my flags, and you stand at the fish cart with yours. That way we can still talk to each other during the week, see? Then Sheryl shakes her head, and she starts writing again. And Johnny reads it back. No, no, my father would see the flags and stop the whole thing, and he would not even let me see ya on Sundays. So Johnny says, hey, don't worry about it. You don't gotta use flags. You can use anything you wanna. They just gotta be big enough for me to see them down the street. So the next day, Sheryl gets up real early and gets all of her fishing done right away so she can spend most of the day at the fish stand. And when she finally gets to the cart, she looks around for something to signal them with, and she grabs a couple of salmon. But then she thinks, nah, I might be making a bunch of mistakes at first. Maybe I should use flounders. So whenever the old man was looking the other way, she starts swinging the things all over the place, up and down and left and right. She even slaps herself in the face a couple of times. And when she looks down the road to Johnny, he's holding his gut and laughing his head off. And then her old man turns around and catches her swinging the fish around, and he thinks, holy mackerel, she's gone off the deep end. He just couldn't fathom what was wrong with her. Maybe she just needed to stretch her muscles for a few minutes. Oh, I'm just having a whale of a time telling you this one, kid. Oh, good grief, you must think I'm tanked. Oh, I'm such a loser. Oh, okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Sheryl was hitting herself in the face with a flounder. Well, Sheryl got the hang of signaling with the fish pretty quick, and she even started making modifications to them. She'd use different kinds of fish depending on how she was feeling. Salmon if she was happy, flounder if she was telling a joke, lobsters when she was feeling crabby, which don't make no sense at all, because you think she'd use it. Never mind, it ain't important. Well, they went on like that for about a month or so, and every Sunday was like Christmas to the two of them. And Johnny was getting as good at the sign language as Sheryl was getting with the fish signals. She even started teaching him how to hold his breath longer underwater like she does, because she knew how his little brother would get distracted while he was working the pump for Johnny. Well, one Wednesday night, Sheryl decided to sneak out of the house and go down to the pier to surprise Johnny, because he'd signaled to her that morning that him and his little brother were going to go down there for some late-night exploring. But when she got there, Johnny and his brother were nowhere to be found. So she looked all over the place, and finally she saw Cannonball working the pump in a boat about 50 yards out from shore. And Sheryl thought, holy shrimp, where the heck did they find a boat? Oh, my sweet, sweet Johnny. He shouldn't be diving out that deep. So she jumps into the water and starts swimming out to him. And when she's about halfway out to the boat, she sees the Cannonball has stopped pumping and was playing with a bunch of firecrackers. And she goes down below to check on Johnny, and he's got his foot caught between a couple of rocks. So she grabs the first two fish she can, and she swims back up and starts swinging the fish around trying to signal the Cannonball. But he just laughs at her and thinks she's just some goofy dame acting all crazy in the water. But then Johnny's old man comes rowing out in a rowboat and starts screaming at Cannonball.
Get back to working that pump. She's trying to tell you that Johnny's in trouble down there.
So Cannonball starts pumping, and the old man dives out of his boat and swims down to Johnny, lifts the rock off his boat, and hauls him back up to the surface. And when they all got back to shore, Cannonball says, where the heck did you come from, Pop? And the old man says,
I've followed the both of yous out here. I had a good feeling that the two of yous was going to be getting into trouble tonight. And it's a good thing I always follow my gut, because you almost killed your brother.
Then Johnny sat up and he took off his diving helmet and he says, I would have been okay, Pop, if I hadn't gotten my foot stuck in them stupid rocks. And the old man says,
Hey, how did you last so long without air down there? Now, how the heck does she know semaphores?
So Johnny explained all about how the two of them was teaching each other all that stuff. And his old man was so impressed that he says,
You know, I think the two of yous just might have been meant for each other. And I think you should be spending a whole lot more time together. Sheryl, maybe I'll talk to your father and see if he'll give Johnny a job with you at the fish stand.
Well, Sheryl was so happy she dropped a fish. If only she had a couple of salmon to show just how happy she was. Well, Cannonball was grounded for about a month for almost killing his brother. And Cheryl's old man did hire Johnny. And she taught him how to hand fish just like she does, so they could spend almost all their time with each other. And when they grew up, they got married and had their own little troop of shrimps. Anyways, so don't let nobody never give you no guff about not being able to talk, 'cause you're in pretty good company, kid. Well, I gotta go pick up your Aunt Florence from the beauty parlor. She finally decided to try one of them beehive hairdos. But I guess something went wrong with it, and she's too embarrassed to take the bus home. So I'll talk to you later, buddy. I miss you and I love you. Bye-bye.